today's reading of the 20th Gene Key from the Gene Keys Embracing Your Higher Purpose by Richard Rudd. I know this is a very unusual time for me to stream, and I haven't streamed in a while, so yeah, I just kind of finally felt like I was being led to do this, and I was like, okay, let's do it. All right, the 20th Gene Key, the Sacred Siddhi, Presence, Gift, Self-Assurance, Shadow, Superficiality. Programming Partner, 34th Gene Key. Code Honoring, the Ring of Life and Death. 3, 20, 23, 24, 27, and 42. Physiology, Brainstem, Medulla, Amino Acid, Leucine. The 20th Shadow, Superficiality. The Insect Revolution. The language of the 20th Gene Key and its various frequencies is a purely existential language. It doesn't really involve thought or thinking in any way at all. And as such, it is quite challenging to grasp at an intellectual level. The 20th shadow in particular concerns how deeply consciousness is able to incarnate into a human form. The more impeded consciousness is within the form, the less pure its expression will be. This gene key is about the quantity of consciousness that can express itself through a human being. And in this sense, it is one of the most mystical of all the 64 gene keys. In the case of the 20th shadow, very little consciousness can express itself at all, so that we see a very watered down reflection of life's real potential coming through human beings operating at this frequency. The role of the shadow is to keep human beings just on the fringe of life without really plunging in. It is the shadow of superficiality. It may sound as though the 20th shadow is somehow the fault of human beings, and that perhaps if we were to do things differently or better, we might escape this plight. However, as we shall see, this aspect of our DNA is very ancient. In fact, it has led us to our current state of evolution. The 20th gene key and its shadow represent a part of the human genome that developed through species that preceded human beings. Most notably, this gene key is the main aspect that humans share with the world of insects and opens up some striking parallels between these two worlds. When we observe insects, one of the things that we can see is how incredibly busy they always seem to be. Most insects only live for a very brief period of time during the summer months. And during those days, weeks, or months, they live pure existential lives whose only focus is to stay alive and reproduce. Early hominids lived in a similar existential reality during a time when genetic programming was mostly expressed through the physical body, through breathing, eating, killing, and having sex. The further we go back in our evolution, the more existential our lives appear to have been. All of this changed with the development of the human neocortex, since this precipitated a shift in the geography of our awareness from our physical instincts to the rapidly burgeoning cognitive abilities in the brain. A strange thing happens when human beings begin to think. It appears that we leave the present moment. This illusion occurs because the mind can only think in a linear fashion, placing every object of thought into a temporal framework. This is the trade-off of the incredible abilities of the mind. For all its genius, It is limited to thinking within the domains of a false reality called time. To the extent that you are dominated by your thinking, consciousness is impeded from functioning fully. This is what we refer to in the Gene Keys as superficiality. To live superficially means to live within the false illusions fabricated by the mind. Many of us here in those so-called old days, when the human mind did not have such a grip on our reality and we lived a more primitive, simpler, and somehow pure existence. The fact is that it wasn't pure in any way at all, and evolution cannot travel backwards. When we, like animals, functioned entirely from our instincts, we had very little sense of morality or conscience. If we were instantly projected there now, the good old days would probably seem both horrific and barbaric to us. The evolution of the human brain has changed the face of our planet, particularly over the past 100 years. And though we sometimes like to complain about the state of the world, this transformation has for the most part been hugely beneficial. The interesting thing about human beings is that we are a mixture of ancient instinctive animal awareness, our current rational mental awareness, and the future holistic spiritual awareness that is about to come fully online. Our nostalgia about the old days actually stems from a genetic memory inside us of a very early epoch in human evolution in which our spiritual awareness was fully developed. However, all evidence of this Eden period was completely obliterated by a great cataclysm, which also mutated our DNA, eventually bringing about the current intellectual age. You can learn more about this from the 55th Gene Key. What appears to be superficiality is really an adjustment in the way our awareness functions. The evolutionary phase that now is coming to an end is the superficial age, when mankind appears to have moved away from nature. But this is not really the case. Despite the fact that we are now dominated by an awareness that cannot exist in the present moment, we still live in the present moment whether we like it or not. Our current mental equipment simply prevents us from feeling one with life in the way that we once did. Evolution requires us to be superficial in order that we can complete this mental phase. However, it has led to a basic estrangement from the source of life itself, and this is reflected in our longing to return to that source. All our scientific and religious cravings have arisen due to the inability of consciousness to move beyond the human brain. Seen in this light, one can see how all the 64 shadows have come about because of this single conundrum. The mind prevents us from feeling one with life. When superficiality is translated into action, it becomes blind activity just for the sake of activity. The only time you are really one with life at the shadow frequency is when you are busy, even though by its very nature this busyness lacks real presence. Rather, it is an absence of awareness. This makes human beings seem similar to insects. We are programmed to be incredibly busy on an individual level. However, unlike certain insect societies, we do not yet operate as a collective. The programming partner of the 20th shadow is the 34th shadow of force, which is about self-absorption. When your activity lacks awareness, it becomes a destructive force that plays havoc with your environment. These two shadows manifest activity or lack of activity in response to the situations created by your mind. Only when the mind has been overridden by our future awareness rooted in the solar plexus can consciousness begin to manifest activity that no longer meets resistance. This is what the Buddha referred to as right action. Right action occurs when the frequency of your DNA lifts you out of the shadow states, at which point all your activity emerges naturally and harmoniously. Only in this final phase of our evolution will mankind begin to imitate the more complex insect societies, such as ants or bees. As consciousness begins to breathe through every single individual, thus melting the collective into one. Repressive nature, absent. The introverted nature of the 20th shadow gives the impression of being totally absent. This is primarily reflected in a person's eyes, which can appear staring or distant. This expression of the 20th shadow can also be an intermittent theme rather than being permanent. The consciousness in such people is often frozen by an intense unconscious fear that temporarily displaces them. This withdrawing of consciousness from the body is actually a kind of mini death. It can also be brought about through an intense shock. These are people in whom life sporadically switches on and off according to the activity or inactivity in their minds. Reactive nature, hectic. In the reactive nature, the mind will do the opposite to the repressed nature. Instead of numbing the fear, this kind of nature will immediately translate it into activity. Thus, these people are ceaselessly on the move, unable to stop in their hectic self-absorption. Again, this is a state that is extremely widespread among human populations due to the deep connection between the shadow and the way in which our mind translates it into activity. The world in which we live is increasingly hectic because our human programming makes it so. As new awareness begins to dawn in human beings, an enormous amount of human activity will simply cease, since it emerges as a byproduct of the mind's restlessness. The 20th gift, self-assurance, divine relaxation. The gift of self-assurance comes into being when a human being first learns to let go of their thinking as the authority in making decisions. With self-assurance must come a profound surrender to life in every moment. As you begin to accept that life has its own plans and flow, you also begin to stop interfering with the process at a mental level. No technique can lead to this gift. Only life itself can show you how to let go. This gift is, in fact, the precursor to a higher state of spiritual awareness. You begin to discover that decisions in life simply get made, so there's really no point in agonizing over them. Decisions at a higher level of frequency are made in the moment rather than being premeditated. Your mind may decide on a certain course of action, but when the decision is actually made at the gift frequency, it emerges instantly and clearly for the entirety of your being. The 20th gift is the foundation of a happy life and is part of the genetic family known as the ring of life and death. The ring of life and death can actually teach us how to create the perfect environment for children to grow into happy, healthy, and enlightened adults. For a child to grow up truly self-assured, we need to model altruism, 27, while remaining detached, 42, and encourage invention, 24, innovation, 3, and above all, simplicity, 23. These 5 keys can become the foundation of a complete life system for parents, and contemplation on them can lead to a profound sense of freedom for both children and parents. Self-assurance is directly analogous to individual strength through its programming partner, the 34th gift. Every child has their own natural strength that emerges organically as they develop, as long as they are given the right loving environment through their parents and peers. The ultimate loving environment for a child is to be surrounded by self-assured adults. The field of openness, integrity, and relaxation created by a large family or community of adults manifesting right action is the perfect natural educational base for children. Self-assurance marks the end of the human tendency to worry about life. It also carries a certain sense of humor within it, although this is really an inner sense of humor or a sense of lightness about life. At this level of frequency, you begin to have the faintest inkling that you may exist at a higher level than you know. You also begin to have the feeling that some higher presence is actually looking after you. Human beings like to anthropomorphize this feeling in a whole host of ways. Their spirit guides and angels, their contact with the souls of the departed, or as the Godhead itself watching over us. In its purest sense, this state of self assurance is actually your own greater nature emerging. It is a sign that more consciousness is being allowed to incarnate into the physical vehicle. Ironically, the more you anthropomorphize this feeling, the less it grows, because that is taking it back into the realm of the mind where it truly doesn't belong. What is occurring at this gift level is that you are beginning to experiment with humanity's future instrument of awareness, the solar plexus system. Within the human body are contained the genetic instructions for a higher mutation in the functioning of our solar plexus system. Once an individual mutation of this kind has been triggered, it is triggered by the 55th gene key. A whole new level of awareness functioning becomes available to you. The 20th gift prepares the ground for this higher mutation, and we will see its full manifestation in the 20th Siddhi. Your self-assurance is directly equivalent to your ability to escape being a victim of your mind. As you begin to learn this knack, you experience a subtle expansion of a meditative awareness, an ability to witness your mind without being caught up in it. This sense of spaciousness continues to grow within, and as you let go more deeply into it, it seems as though you are in the grip of another force outside yourself. The byproduct of this expansion is the quality of self assurance, the continual feeling that everything is going to be all right. At this stage, a kind of relief dawns you. You no longer have to try and control life. On the contrary, you now allow life to move you. What actually occurs with this gift is that the awareness within your solar plexus begins to take over from your mind. In China and Japan, there has always been a profound understanding based upon the solar plexus center, which is known in the Orient as the Hara or the Dantian. The practitioners of the ancient yogic systems discovered this latent awareness within the Hara and based their entire philosophy around it, from medicine to the martial arts. The awareness that emanates from the solar plexus center is based upon surrender. In this sense, it is about tapping a very powerful universal feminine power. It may come as a shock to some that the power of self assurance is based upon surrender rather than assertion. Self assurance is far more than simple confidence, which can be built up through assertion or technique. The 20th gift can only be cultivated through trust, patience, and surrender, none of which are techniques. As such, self-assurance is based upon a philosophy of allowing everything to come to you rather than going out and chasing life down. It is because of this divine laziness that the 20th gift is the real foundation for inner relaxation.